Hey everyone, my name's Curt Rice and I'm the Rector of Oslo Metropolitan University here in Oslo, Norway. And I thought I might take a couple minutes just to tell you about an interesting discussion we've been having here this spring related to working conditions during the coronavirus crisis. When we had to make that very sudden change and people had to start working at home and schools closed and restaurants closed and all sorts of normal things in daily life suddenly weren't possible, I thought at the time that this was likely to have a strong impact on early career researchers, and it was likely to have different impacts for young men than what it would have for young women. Issues about gender equality have been important to me for a very long time. I actually lead something here in Norway called the Committee for Gender Balance and Diversity in Research. And I like to think about these things in part because I like to think about how hidden discrimination and bias affects people's careers, and I also like to think about what we could possibly do about it. Well, last week an article came along in which the author had surveyed a number of editors from different scientific journals. And time again, this author writing the article had received feedback that submissions from women the last few months had plummeted, whereas submissions from men had taken off. When I heard that, I was happy to have the knowledge, I was happy to have that research or that survey as a foundation for my own thoughts, but it didn't surprise me at all. It didn't surprise me at all because even here in Norway, where we have a very gender-balanced society, it's still the case that women do a lot more work at home than men do. From the surveys that we have, we think that women probably do a little more than 2 hours a day more of unpaid work at home than what their male partners do. And we also have started to see research results from this spring showing that in this time of having home offices, women are taking on more and more of the traditional things that have to be taken care of. In other words, we see a strengthening, a reinforcement of those traditional divisions of roles, division of labor at home, with the entirely predictable result that the productivity that women have in their job has been challenged and has gone down. Well, when I started thinking about this more, soon the Norwegian government said that, okay, we can ease up a little bit. We can send some kids back to school. We can reopen the daycares. And some people can be allowed to use their office. And then it was my job to try to make a system for that because we can't all use our offices. So we had to identify the criteria that management would use in order to decide who could get to come to their office. And there are lots of different criteria. For example, if you need a lab to do your work, or if you have some special program on a computer at the office that you don't have at home, there are lots of different kinds of criteria. And I said, one criteria that is legitimate to take account of is if somebody says, look, I have little kids at home, I have, in the totally predictable ways, I have to do more housework than I usually do, I can't get any work done, I need to come to my office to be able to have the peace and quiet that is necessary to do my research. So what I said is, if somebody makes that argument, that's a legitimate argument. If you are a manager who is making a decision about who can come back, maybe you should let young women come back before young men, knowing what we know about gender equality at home. Well, needless to say, that created a little bit of reaction, and journalists got excited about it, and some of my colleagues got excited about it also. And of course, the simplest criticism of it is that this is a kind of reverse discrimination, or I like to call it positive discrimination. Turns out that positive discrimination is actually legal in Norway under very restricted circumstances. For example, if it's a response to a historical discrimination. Well, there's little that I think is less controversial than the claim that the distribution of unpaid work is discriminatory. That is to say, women do a lot more unpaid work than men do. If that's true, which everything we know seems to suggest, then this kind of measure that's designed to specifically redress such a situation can be legal for a short period. So it's not illegal to make that charge, and it might be a smart thing to do, especially if the current public health situation is such that we have to have home offices not for 2 or 3 months, but maybe for a couple of years, which I think is not unlikely at all. I think it's not unlikely that certainly for the coming academic year, some of us can be at work, but others will have to be at home. Maybe we have to rotate somehow. But this situation is not going to end this summer. It's not a short-term thing. It's a long-term thing, and it's going to have a career-long impact on especially people early in their careers. And I think it's going to have a much bigger impact negatively on women who are early in their careers rather than men who are early in their careers. And because of that, I think it's legitimate to acknowledge that and to acknowledge that structurally and in terms of policy. So that's what I'm trying to do here in Norway. I'm getting punched in the nose a lot for that, but I can take it. And I think it's really, really important to think as deeply as we can about the discriminatory structures that we've built into our societies and what kinds of even very little things can have an impact to counter the effect of those. So I hope that you have the chance to talk about this with your colleagues and to think about it a little bit, and I wish you the best of luck in those discussions.